Let me tell y'all something real, something that's been sitting heavy on my chest since I first heard it. If you think you already know what went down with Shedeur Sanders during the NFL draft process, I'm just going to say it right now. You don't. I thought I knew too. I followed every headline, every mock draft, every so-called scouting report. But after what Ryan Clark just dropped, man, it flipped everything upside down for me. I'm talking full 180, and listen, this ain't about football. It's not about Shedeur's arm strength or his accuracy. It's not about footwork or decision-making. Nah, what Ryan Clark exposed. It was personal. It was calculated. It was bigger than the game, this whole thing, this whole so-called evaluation process. According to Clark, it was a hit job. Not on Shedeur, but on his father. Coach Prime, and I can't lie to you, when I realized what was really going on, it hit me in the gut. Because it wasn't just shady. It was cruel. It was surgical. And the target wasn't a player. It was a father. So please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Now look, we're talking about Deion Sanders. It's prime time. A man who's been larger than life since the moment he stepped into a stadium. This is the same guy who walked into NFL interviews back in the day and straight up told teams, if you're picking after number 5, don't even bother. He was that confident and he could back it up. Every time. Whether it was on the field, behind the mic, or in a locker room, Deion always controlled the narrative. He owned his story. Dictated the pace. But for the first time in his life, Deion couldn't control this. And Ryan Clark laid it all out. There were people, influential people, who've been watching Deion's rise over the years. Watching him break norms. Watching him bring swag and fire to a game that often punishes individuality. And they were waiting. Waiting for a window. To knock him down a peg. Waiting for a moment when they could finally say, see? He ain't untouchable after all. And that moment came when Shedeur entered the draft process. Now stop and think about how sick that is. Instead of evaluating the kid on tape, on his numbers, on his production, suddenly all the reports were filled with whispers. Character. Concerns. Headphones in meetings. Does he take coaching well? Not one of those things could be proven. Not one had any footage to back it up. But none of it could be refuted either. It's the perfect kind of sabotage, the kind you can't argue against because it's not about facts. It's about narrative. Ryan Clark saw straight through it. He said when you can't attack the stats, when the film speaks too loud, you go for the one thing you can muddy up. Character. You create fog. You raise questions you don't need to answer. Because once the whispers are out there, NFL teams start digging. They start investigating. But by then, the damage is already done. And you know what really hit me? Clark said Shedeur wasn't even the target. Let that sink in. They weren't trying to ruin Shedeur. They were trying to hit Deion, using his son, his child, as the weapon. Just imagine being a father and seeing your son get dragged through the mud just so someone could take a shot at you. That's next level vindictive. That's not sports. That's not business. That's personal. That's evil. And I'm telling you, it worked. For the first time in his entire legendary career, Coach Prime couldn't stop what was happening. He couldn't control the headlines, couldn't flip the narrative, couldn't protect his son. And when he sat down and said, it did hurt, man, you could hear it in his voice. It wasn't just disappointment, that was heartbreak. That was a father watching his child suffer for battles he didn't even sign up for. I've been around this game for a while. I've seen dirty tactics. I've seen players get mislabeled, misjudged, mistreated. But this was something else. This was decades of resentment and jealousy boiling over. And for some folks, it wasn't enough just to slow Deion down. They wanted to hurt him, where it would hurt the most, through his kids. Shedeur Sanders had 6 offensive coordinators during his college career. 6. And every time they changed the system, he leveled up, adjusted, he grew, he produced, he led. He put his body on the line behind suspect offensive lines and still balled out. At Jackson State, then at Colorado, he showed he could hang. But none of that made it into the mainstream draft discussion. Instead, what did we get? He wore headphones. During interviews, Are you serious? That's what we're talking about? Not the touchdowns, not the tape, not the numbers, but headphones. You know what that is? That's fear. Fear of what Deion represents. Fear that his rise might shake. The power structure in the NFL? Fear that maybe, just maybe, his sons would carry that same disruptive energy. That same unapologetic confidence. And the most twisted part of all this, Deion knew it. In that emotional interview, he said it himself. He couldn't see the next level. He couldn't look ahead because his focus was stuck on the people. Trying to hurt his kids, even admitted some folks in the league were scared he might make the leap to the NFL as a coach. So they took preemptive shots at his family. You ever heard of that before? That's not scouting. That's not evaluation. It's sabotage. That's fear in disguise. And then Ryan Clark brought up something that cut even deeper. Chris Carter. Someone who came up during the same era as Deion. Someone who was supposed to understand the grind. Might have been part of that hurt. And if that's true, man, that's betrayal on a whole other level. Because when it's your peers, your brothers in the game, the ones who know what it took to get there when they turn on you, that wound doesn't heal easy. So yeah, Coach Prime said it plain. It did hurt. I felt that. Because this wasn't about money. This wasn't about where Shedeur would land. This was about a father watching his son carry the weight of his own enemies. And that pain doesn't show up on a stat sheet, but it's real. And let me just leave y'all with this. The Bible says God uses the foolish things to confound the wise. And maybe, just maybe, all this foolishness, setting the stage for something bigger. Because if there's one thing I know about Coach Prime and his family, they don't fold. They rise. So if you thought this story was over, if you thought Deion and Shedeur were down for the count, you might want to think again. Because something tells me this chapter ain't the end, it's just the beginning. It was like certain people couldn't wait to discredit this kid. Couldn't wait to poke holes in his leadership, his attitude, his personality. And you got to ask yourself, why? Meanwhile, on the other side, you had real ones Michael Irvin, Keyshawn Johnson, guys who lived and breathed this game at the highest level, standing up for Shedeur, speaking truth, talking about his skill, his poise, his maturity. You could tell they weren't threatened by him. They weren't uncomfortable with the idea that Deion's son might actually have what it takes to make it in this league. The key difference? Some folks just couldn't handle the possibility that this kid might have inherited not just the name, but the greatness, too. So please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button, like the video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. And let me just say this. Ryan Clark said something that hit me deep. He pointed out that maybe, just maybe, the media attention and the hate Shedur's been getting has had the opposite effect. Because think about it. Maybe it's just the algorithm. Maybe I've just been tuned in, but I've never seen a 5th round pick or an undrafted guy get this much attention. Not even close. I see Shiloh and Shedeur on my feed more than I see first-rounders. They're everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Threads, you name it. So what does that tell you? That the smear campaign backfired spectacularly. They tried to bury him, but they accidentally made him a star. They tried to turn people away, and instead they made everybody start watching. They elevated his visibility to a level that no 5th-round quarterback has ever had. Let's be real. He's got more clout, more social traction, more buzz than most of the guys drafted before him. And now he's walking into a real opportunity in Cleveland. Let's talk about that for a second, because if you're looking at this Browns quarterback room, Joe Flacco, respect to him, but he's not the future. Kenny Pickett. He's still trying to prove he belongs, and let's just say the jury's out. So what does that leave us with? It leaves us with Dillon Gabriel versus Shedeur Sanders. 2 young guys, both hungry, both trying to make their mark. But only one of them had to survive a full-on media takedown while carrying a program in his family name on his back. Let me say this clearly after everything Shedeur's already faced. You think a training camp battle is going to faze him? You think he's going to blink because he has to compete for a job? Nah, man. It's where people got him all the way messed up. What they didn't realize is all that criticism, all that doubt, it didn't break him. It built him. Every time someone questioned his character, he got sharper. Every time they tried to minimize him, he added it to the fire. They didn't break the kid. They made him dangerous. And then you add in what Ryan Clark said about Deion. That. It was probably the realest moment we've seen from Coach Prime. Hearing him open up about how painful it's been as a father, knowing he's always tried to shield his sons, to set them up for success, and now feeling like maybe, just maybe, some of the hate they're getting is because of him. That right there is a powerful moment, a vulnerable moment, and it speaks to how twisted the system can be. Because the truth is, Deion didn't create monsters. He raised warriors. He raised men who are ready to fight through anything. And now we're seeing what that looks like when it's put to the test. Shedeur's not just playing with talent. He's playing with pain. He's playing with purpose. And every shot they took at him has turned into fuel. Let's not forget he went through 6 different coordinators.
That's 6 most guys would
crumble under that kind of instability. Most quarterbacks need consistency to even stay afloat. But Shedeur, he kept adapting, kept improving, kept showing up when it mattered. And every time the lights got brighter, he played better. And let's talk about the arm, because people really tried to act like he didn't have NFL tools. Are you kidding me? He throws with anticipation, accuracy, touchy processes defenses quickly. He's mobile enough to escape pressure, but disciplined enough to keep his eyes downfield. Yet, somehow, because his last name is Sanders, people wanted to second-guess it all. The evaluation wasn't about tape it was about legacy. And not. In a good way. They let their bias cloud what was right in front of them. But now we're about to see what happens when that same kid they tried to tear down gets his shot in Cleveland. What happens when all that noise fades away and he's just out there slinging it on Sundays? What happens when he proves them all wrong? The field in front of the world. Because trust me, he will. He's too driven, too sharp, too dialed in.
Count.
And he's got something most young quarterbacks don't. A mission. This isn't just about making a roster. It's about vindication. It's about proving every single person who took a cheap shot dead wrong. And when that first breakout game comes in, it will come, I hope, every person who doubted him has to sit there and watch. Because that's the kind of moment Shedeur Sanders is built for. So let me ask you this. Do you think this was all coincidence? You think this was just honest scouting? Or was there something more calculated going on behind the scenes? Was this a hit job on Coach Prime and his family? Or am I just connecting dots that aren't there? Either way, the story's far from over. In fact, I think it's just getting good. And I can't wait to see how it all plays out. So drop your thoughts down in the comments, let's talk about it. And if you want to ride with me as we follow this saga, hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. Because trust me, this revenge tour, it's going to be one for the books. You're not going to want to miss what happens next. Thanks for watching, and see you next one.